Nowadays, we especially see it with the launch of the AI business. I must see 50 new AI businesses a day. It would almost be impossible to get me to trust one, just because I see them come and go so quickly. And that's the modern day buyer. So we have to fit the modern day selling for these people. There's a lot of noise out there now. There's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of people pitching at them. There's a lot of people promising them the world. And it's forced them to be more hesitant. So to do really good jobs, you have to be very different to that. It can't be, here's a flash sale, or we guarantee all results 100%. I've never seen that happen.
You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a modern approach to winning business, the application of virtual selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. Why not take our free collaborative selling scorecard to see how your sales approach suits today's environment? You'll find a link in the show notes. Welcome to this edition of the Sales Today podcast, where I'm delighted to be joined by Gearoid Cox. Gearoid is founder of Sales Pipeline, which essentially, if I've understood well, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, you provide sales teams in a box, really, to organizations. Is that fair, or have I oversimplified your carefully curated offer?
No, in a lot of ways, that's exactly it. So we focus on bringing enterprise level sales to smaller sales teams, right? So I've worked in sales a very long time. I went out and worked in an early stage business and quickly learned the lessons that the brand behind me, the different things that I had in my arsenal, I wasn't fully appreciating. And when you were in a much smaller business, things were very different. And there was no incoming leads. Nobody knew we existed, all the different things that went into it. So after fighting through that process, I focused Sales Pipeline on solving that exact problem, which is most early stage businesses don't understand how complex or difficult sales are going to be for them. It can be underestimated and overestimated. So what we do is bring all the different things that you need to be successful in the right amount for the stage of your business. So often what we used to see the whole time, and a problem that we solve, is the founder's doing all the selling, but now the founder can't run the business. So like you kind of have a bottleneck there. Or they hire an individual salesperson and expect them to be a specialist in everything from outreach to closing and multinational deals, which also is impossible. So a lot of what we actually end up doing is educating on what you actually need at this time, and then helping to build and run it for you so you can have more time to focus on other areas of the business, and revenue growth is kind of covered in a realistic way, if that makes sense.
No, I love it. So if I summarize, you had a bit of an armchair ride.
Mhm.
And then you suddenly went, oh God, this is not as easy when you're on your own as I thought it would be. Yeah.
100%. It was the first time I realized how lucky I was when I worked in these big enterprise companies. When I finally, as a young sales guy, when you're doing well, and definitely for me, I was like, I'm great at this. This is amazing. Like, I close these huge deals. I'm out here pioneering. But you really start to realize when you don't have all those things, what that support really meant, and all those people and functions and marketing and brand name and previous deals to reference, and all the case studies. You might not use them as you think you would, where someone sits down and reads a whole case study, but they're all trust layers that you don't have in an early stage business, right? So yeah, it was the first time I realized, okay, now I see truly how hard this actually is, like at its core.
Yeah. But and the other thing you said was complex sales. So let me just check on that. Do you mean that sales is a complex thing, or were you talking about complex sales, typically defined as kind of like longer sales cycle, more people involved, more stakeholders, and kind of a bit more sophisticated offer, or both?
I think both, right?
All
Like,
right.
I think both are more complex than people think. I think, how many founders have come to me or sales leaders and they say, "Oh, it's easy to sell," and I'm like, "Okay, let's break it down step by step. Let's just treat me like I'm a golden retriever. Let's go step by step." And you're going, "Okay, nothing about that sounds simple." It might be simple in your head, and I think even for simplistic offers, what we would refer to as a simple offer, which is like a quicker sales cycle, it can be even more complex because you don't get as many chances to save it. When I worked in manufacturing, and you have this experience too, you can afford more small mistakes over a 9 month sales cycle or a 12-month sales cycle. You have time to recover, you have time to add. If you have a 1 week sales cycle, you can't really afford any mistakes. It's a different thing. So it's complex in a different nature. But I think what I'm really referring to is sales, especially from the outside, seems like, oh, they talk to people, they get money. It's like, if you knew what it really took to drive revenue in a business, and how much failure and rejection and all the different things that you need to go through, or like even If you look at something super basic, which people always underestimate, oh, I need to close 10 deals a month. Well, how many outreach messages do you really need to send to get to that? People grossly underestimate. If you want to guarantee 10 meetings, you're going to have to do a lot more than you think. And that's a lot of what we're going through with people, especially founders, where you're saying, okay, here's all the industry standards. And like, let's do the math backwards. Where are we going? So we want to get to $10 million revenue a year or 20 million or whatever it is. Okay, let's go back through all the different things we need to hit to make that happen and see what we need to put in at the base level. And when you go backwards, you see their eyes kind of open. It's like, oh, this is much more than I really thought originally I needed to do, you know?
Because if it's early stage, and you're talking about some quite young businesses there, weren't you? Someone's reached out, friends, family, contacts, network, and they are getting all those meetings because people are giving the courtesy, and actually they probably unconsciously profiled the right people because they've recognized that problem, and hey, that's why it's so easy. Right. Now other people are going to have to do this, and we're going to have to do this more often. And we've run out of
Yeah.
all your mates.
Yeah, and a big thing that we handle, probably more than half our business, is the transition from founder sales to sales team, and the explanation that like you inherently have more trust as a founder of this business with a career in this field with 105 stories of why this works and you've thought about it in depth. We can't actually transfer that knowledge to a young sales team. You know, they're green in your business regardless how experienced they are. They're selling from a completely different place. You're subconsciously saying, "Oh, well, I got 20 meetings the first 2 months." It's like, yeah, 15 of them are your friends. Like you've built up relationships in this business. This is a completely different thing. So a lot of what we have to do is model out what the future looks like and what you need to put in now to get the result you're really looking for, which when we speak to founders, they're like, oh, we're at 2 million revenue and we want to go to 20. And you're like, well, the 2 million is actually easier to get than the next 10 because the sales team have to operate in a completely different way. You know, and we
Yeah.
also need to go way outside your network now, which is a different thing.
Yeah, interesting. Actually, I'm just going to go a tiny little sidebar here because we've been speaking about 5 minutes, and you used the word trust three times.
The word what, sorry?
Trust,
Yeah.
about how important trust is. Um, I'm going to ask what might sound like a bit of a dumb question, but that's sometimes the best, aren't I? Why is trust so important? Why have you that? Why has that popped up a couple of times straight away?
I think probably from my background, like when you work in manufacturing sales and the sales cycles are very long, and you have a double-edged sword here, right? So for me, there's always two types of trust. There's trust in well, there's three really. There's trust in the brand that you're selling from, which is something we're kind of combating now because we're going to brands that, nobody knows them. So creating trust in the brand or maintaining trust in the brand. Then there's trust in the solution, right? Not every solution is fit for every problem. And then there's trust in you as the salesperson or company representative, or maybe it's a team, especially in manufacturing, it used to always be a team. You have solution engineers, whatever else, you might have integrators. Are you the people to deliver it? And these are what I would call, they're not the things that make a sale, but they're the things that can break one. And unless somebody is bought into a certain level on all three, it's very unrealistic to be forecasting a deal like that. You know what I mean? So that's what I've always focused on is, you hear trusted advisor status, those kind of things. My own version of that is trying to fill these three buckets enough to make sure that we can get over the line. Because there's always going to be one of these things that's not perfect. Either, you haven't built up the trust as a person that you make enough sense, that you're speaking the right language, that you have the referenceability. Same goes for the company, same goes for the solution. And you're always going to be kind of fighting at least one. So for me, I always weigh up my deals in those three buckets, and seeing what actions I can take in each three to move it forward. Because I think where I failed early in my career is that I overlooked one of them. I assumed they trusted the brand, and turns out these people didn't have the buy-in. Or I assumed because I knew the solution would work really well that I'd done enough to explain to them how it would work really well, and that's where I lost deals. So I think as I got older, I was like, okay, these are the things that I need to focus on really early and be consciously growing, because when it's at the end of a sales cycle, if you're up against competitors, it's way too late to be trying to build this. You know what I mean? This is a thing you're building every day in your actions.
So no one got fired for buying IBM, which is from the 70s.
Hmm.
Still rings very, very true. Yeah. And I think the modern take on that, I think, is from Jolt, isn't it? Where people kind of move from this kind of buying because they're worried about missing out to actually, there's a switch, isn't there, to actually, am I going to mess up here? And that's where the trust in, okay, I think that's what you're saying. That's where it starts to really ramp up. It's hang on a minute. Is the company going to do me good here? Does that solution really going to work? It sounded good in theory. Has this guy been stringing me along all the time because he's a salesperson? And of course he would say that it works.
Yeah,
Why
and
would
I
he
think
not? It's his job.
buyers are yeah, and buyers are forced to be more educated. And also there's way more solutions on the market than there ever was. Like even when I started selling, which is what, like 12, 13 years ago, when I started selling real equipment, there was still less options. Nowadays, we especially see it with the launch of the AI business. I must see 50 new AI businesses a day. Like it would almost be impossible to get me to trust one, just because I see them come and go so quickly. And that's the modern day buyer. So we have to fit the modern day selling for these people. There's a lot of noise out there now. There's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of people pitching at them. There's a lot of people promising them the world, and it's forced them to be more hesitant. So to do really good jobs, you have to be very different to that. It can't be here's a flash sale or we guarantee all results 100%. I've never seen that happen.
Yeah. And what you said about being more educated, I see this in more traditional industries that people are still like, I must educate the buyer, or like, I am the source of information. They can't live without me. It's like, no, they can. They
Hmm.
probably know more about your product than you do, and
A
all your
lot of the time.
competitors as well. And you're coming in, as you said, later. Why? Because they've started to figure out a lot of this stuff themselves. Um, unless you've been very smart and you've introduced yourself early in the process by talking about stuff that could potentially happen and then already building trust. You're like, wow, you get us.
Yeah, and there's even that has two sides. Like one of the things I think that made me most successful in manufacturing sales was a really good lesson someone taught me about it's all about their value, but their value is split in two ways. They're both a company and a person. And then if you're valuable to both parties, you're in a much stronger position. And I think early stage sellers, and I see this all the time when I'm training, they're almost itching to scream all the value they have at you that they've learned from the marketing materials. But like throughout my career, I found myself valuable to buyers, as in the person themselves, in weird and wonderful ways. People are strange and people have very different needs, wants, desires. And, one of the things I think I did best in my career that was a bit of an accident was I was young in the manufacturing game and a lot of people around me had more relationships. And I don't know, I got it into my head. It's like, okay, how am I going to combat this? So I decided to make friends with everyone who sold something adjacent to me. Like, so I was selling inspection systems. I was like, I need to meet every robotics guy in the country. If you make a conveyor belt, I want to know you. And I spent my time building up their trust. And what accidentally happened, I'd love to say it was a plan, is I became the trusted advisor because anytime someone ever said to me, like, oh, I'm having a problem with this, it's like, I know the guy. Let me call him. And then that guy would start bringing me deals. And then I was like, oh, I've created an accidental ecosystem here out of a place of feeling like I didn't have what I needed to get a deal over the line. Now I have more than I could ever need to get a deal over the line. And that's how I became more valuable to the people. So like a lot of these buyers, they were under pressure from manufacturing directors to solve problems, not to buy my solution. And it always required more than I had to sell. So it became more of a, okay, how many people do you know and how well do you work together and how are they treating this person or can you get them an audience with whatever supplier or even, oh, I've seen that before. I was in another site and that the way you're trying to do it is more complicated than it needs to be. Here's a different solution. And it really changed how easy it was to sell things. And then for the first time ever, the sales were coming to me, which is a big help. Like any revenue you can get driven towards you makes your life a whole lot easier, right?
Oh, you have said so much there. So much there. I love this concept of salespeople going out screaming value at people.
But I
Oh,
see it every day. I hate to say it, even in my own company, I'm constantly fighting that battle of like, can we ask questions, listen to the answer, and then ask another question? Like, why are we like, as soon as when I'm training early stage salespeople, I get them to ask questions, and then they're like, they ask the question, the guy answers, scream value again. It's like, whoa, no, we're stopping that completely. We're trying to understand the need here.
I had a colleague of mine, Mike Wilkinson, who a bit back, we were traveling somewhere and we were chatting away and he says, because of course Fred values a mystery. I said, yeah, Mike. What do you mean, Mike? And he's like, well, look, you don't know what value is. How can you, and he didn't say scream value, but how can you talk about value to somebody when you don't know what it is to them? They define it. Customer defines it. And the customer probably doesn't know it either. So actually, like you say, we can't just go in there shouting and yelping, screaming. we've got to work that out.
Yeah, I teach a
And,
really
and
basic
people are
lesson.
strange, yeah.
I teach a super basic lesson in sales training for so we have a like a training program for young salespeople, and the best way I've found to describe it is like the reason you have to ask a lot of questions is if you go in pitching a robust solution to somebody who needs a quick one, you're gone. And vice versa. If you go in there pitching super fast, quick solution to someone who's looking for something robust, you're also gone. And what does it cost you but a couple of questions? People actually want to talk about their problem. They want to be heard. And I think as salespeople, we've created this issue where we've shut off the listening devices somehow. And I understand where it comes from and all those kind of things, but when you get used to it, it's actually kind of easy. You don't waste your time on bad deals also, so you have more time to spend on people you can actually sell to.
Do you think, I mean, just kind of thinking, picking up on the questioning thing there, there's also a little bit of a hangover from kind of older school training, which isn't the worst ever,
Mm,
where, yeah, go in, ask questions to understand what their need is to provide our solution. Great. I mean, look, that someone's doing that, that's not bad.
yeah.
But more modern step is go in, ask questions so that they can get their head around it, giving them that clarity, helping them understand something and having that ah moment. You might see it actually. You go, I've seen this tons of times. I could just tell you what it is. They need to get their head around it. And when they do, that suddenly went, oh, you've helped me work this out. You're dead good.
Yeah, and
But I
there's
think we
so
sometimes
many
miss that. We're still trying to like
there's
qualify,
so
need, bang me solution in.
there's so many stages as well that influence this. Like we could go to another one, which is so many salespeople come originally from outbound, and the thinking is hard to change because
Mm,
they're doing so much outbound that's call it personalized, call it unpersonalized. It's certainly not discovery, call it questioning. They're just trying to get meetings in the book, and that's where a lot of salespeople come from now. So that's a mentality problem. You have to help them shift. But also, as you said, um, it's a bit like being a psychologist sometimes as a salesperson, right? Like you can't just tell these people the answer. You have to kind of dance your way down a path together. Like, we're both figuring each other out, and it's really hard to explain that to people sometimes, isn't it? It's like it's not knowing the answer that's going to make you good at this. It's helping people find their own answer.
exactly.
Because a lot of the time, like the reality of sales is you're not overly concerned what makes them buy this as long as it's something you can provide. So if you have the same product that has five different features and five different customers cling on to the individual five features, great, they made the right decision. As long as you can back that up and provide that solution, you don't care. So you have to be very careful jumping in with the answer because I think I found that, and I'm sure you have stories of this too. I have found out the strangest reasons people value things that would never have crossed my mind because we're not wired the same, right? We're not coming from the same place. So you got to let them come to their own conclusion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, again, I've got this in my head, this screaming value thing. You'll probably hear me use this for months on end now. Um, the value can be in that clarity that you bring them. No, it's not your product. I say lots of products are pretty much the same anyway. People hate it when I say that when I'm training, but it's true. But the value was the fact that you've walked off and they kind of look at you drive out and they go, God, that was so valuable, that meeting. No one else has helped me really understand that. Yeah, everyone comes in shouting at me with all this stuff, how great they are. That was valuable. That I'm going to work with that person. May or may not be the best solution, but for me, it feels like it because they got it or they helped me get it.
Yeah, and there's
Yeah.
another thing. I remember I was doing sales scripts for a company one time, maybe about a year ago, and we changed the simplest thing, right? Where we had kind of identified through our own process that the problem was the trust in the salesperson. It was a pretty quick sales process, so they weren't getting a lot of time to build this trust. They were having two calls and they were probably having them 3 days apart, and they were pitching the solution, right? So the first call was good discovery, they were talking about it. Second call, they were saying, right, here's what we found and whatever. We changed the smallest thing in the world. At the end of the call, we were like, nothing works perfectly. But I guarantee you this, if you call me, I will answer it and I will handle it. I will be your single point of contact. Dramatically changed everything. And yes, this is a very different type of sale and it's a quick, more consumer based sale, right? But it changed so much that you just showed them the path to solving their problem. Like the fear in their head was, what if this doesn't work? And all we did was kind of say, if this doesn't work, which happens, we're not hiding from it, you just call me. I'm your single point of contact. I always will be. And it was a dramatic increase. And I learned like we did this kind of we were going through trial and error, right? I'm telling this story like I read the script and I was like, I have it. There was A/B testing, right? This wasn't a 1 week fix. But when we did that, it changed absolutely everything. And it said something to me. It's that like I understood this buyer a little bit more now. I was like, okay, I get it. There's just some small little hang up, and all we have to do is give them a route to solve their problem. They don't care. They obviously want it to work, but they're not expecting it to work perfectly. And when you clarify that you agree also, you understand that too, but when that happens, this is what you do, they were much, much, much more satisfied and much happier to move ahead. And like we've taken that lesson and included it in many other types of sale now, where it's like, okay, show them all the potential routes. You know,
Yeah.
people don't want to be told this will definitely work. No one believes that.
It's funny you say this. Time of recording, I was in Spain last week. Yeah, and I think you live in Spain anyway. So I was there with my wife, we were on holiday. And we were sort of sat in this restaurant next to the beach. And I said to the guy, "What's your pay like?" And he said, "It's okay." And I started laughing. What do you mean? Just okay. He said, "It's okay. Normal." It's not the best on the coast. It's not the worst on the coast. At that stage, I thought, right, this is the place for us.
Yeah.
Not the paella, but we will have something here because it is the type of place I want to hang around because of that transparency, the trust built in this place immediately. Um, yeah,
And
it's
it's
kind of that
funny.
thing, isn't it? It's just that kind of that open, that honesty. Um, yeah, and it
And you
solved the
take
roots of the problem is we wanted something to eat. It didn't have to be
yeah,
paella, to be fair. Just
and
want to be something
take that
decent.
as if you take that a step further, this is a lot of what we try to do as a business, right? Where yes, you need to do that as an individual, but now how do you create a culture of that? How do you create a culture of people who, in groups of 4 to 10 to 20, can do that as an entire unit? So no matter who you speak to, they're singing off the same hymn sheet, they have the same attitude. Because exactly as you said, people are very rarely out there searching for perfection. Some founders have it fine, but very rarely are they searching for perfection. They're searching to go to the next step, to the next level, to solve problem one, two, and three. And a lot of what we've worked in verbally and kind of similar to the scripts is like, no matter what you choose to do, we're going to be here with you. We can't do everything, but we're going to support you. That kind of language. But how do you create an entire team of people doing that? How do you create trainings that no one person is screaming value, as we said, or not doing enough on the other side, or over promising or under delivering? And that's what we specialize in, is creating what we like to call like a whole ecosystem of that.
Yeah.
Where everybody can do it, where everybody is doing the right things every day with the right level of enthusiasm, where yes, we believe in what we do, yes, we want to help you, but also we're, as you say, it's okay. It's better than average, it's not the worst, but there's always better, bigger, and more expensive, right?
Because actually, what you were doing was looking for somewhere to eat
Hmm.
and somewhere decent to eat. And actually, by saying that, you've indicated that. I think okay, so. Go back into corporate, into the commercial. It's hard because I don't think organisations can help themselves. Yeah, we're innovative. We're market leader. We're number one. It's like, everybody says exactly the same thing. Yeah, but we really are. And if we say it, we're different. No, you're not. You're literally saying the same words that other people are, and you're training salespeople to say the same thing and sound the same. So now it makes no difference to me because you're all
100.
saying the same thing. But I'm not, is that the individual? So yeah, that's the organization. The organization needs to get their
It's
head around that and be comfortable saying, no, let's be different here. Let's say we're not necessarily the best at that. And
yeah, there's a
just
massive
get over ourselves that our product probably is the same as everybody's.
Yeah, or understand where you're actually better, which is a different problem that only your customer can really tell you sometimes. But I think that's a big problem. We talk about it all the time, which is the relationship between sales and marketing, and especially internally. Because yeah, marketing so often like, and I hate most sales training for this reason. I love good sales training. I just think it's rarer than it should be. Because people come in and give the marketing spiel to your salespeople. As you said, you're handing them the language use to be seen as one of the crowd.
Yeah.
Words like revolutionary, like, these guys, like, the Industrial Revolution was a long time ago. Like everybody is moving forward at a pretty quick pace now. And I think it can stall so many things. Like I've seen it stall product growth for founders because they start to believe it. Like the only a friend of mine who's a salesperson and a good one uses this kind of same trope all the time. Something is worth what someone is willing to pay you. And you can
Yeah.
think it's worth whatever you want, but the market is telling you what people are listening to, what people are spending money on. That's the truth. And I think as businesses get bigger, they get so much further from the truth. I don't know if you notice this when you talk to sales teams and they're like some of their complaints sometimes are like this company doesn't know what it is anymore. Like the client is telling me this is what they want, but yet we're going over here and telling them how great it is to come with us, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So what we're saying is, so we've stopped the salespeople screaming at people. They've
Yeah.
calmed down. Yeah, chilled, having a chat, like person to person, understanding them, questions, happy days. But then marketing comes screaming in.
It's a
Or
lot of
say,
screaming.
no, you didn't tell them that. Right, I'm going to have to do it then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Um, right, rewinding slightly again. I love this idea of your accidental ecosystem. That's brilliant, mate. Tell me a little bit more about it.
It came from a place probably of slight negativity where I was trying to run before I walked in some ways, like I wanted to be successful right away and I was working now for a very big brand and I knew I could do it, because I had been given every tool on God's planet's earth to make it done and to make it happen and I just was like, what is this missing link? And I felt like that's what it was, right? Because it started from a place of personal education too. I was sitting with clients not having a clue what was going on because my solution, although very expensive and although very important, I was realizing how small a cog it was on this wheel. When Company X was building a manufacturing line that was going to do $1 million a day worth of product, and my solution wasn't running it. I was like, okay, I need more. I need to understand more. um and I went in search of that education, and through that I started getting relationships which started helping me. So then I went in search of the relationships, and really what I was trying to do, someone had taught me that, as I say, I don't know how to put it, but I always say I learned the first layer of something. So someone spoke about what trusted advisor meant. I learned level one of that meant at that time. And I kind of thought, right, what if I could get more people to come through me? Like, let's play total football here, right? Rather than just being the guy who could get everywhere, what if I could create more people coming to me because I knew who to do this with, who to do that with? And I just embarked on that journey kind of organically. And as I said, I woke up one day, my phone used to ring at 1 a.m. It's like, this line is down. It's like, we don't even sell these products, but okay, I'll text that guy for you. We'll make something work. And as I said, I just had this accidental ecosystem. And then once you create momentum, people were coming to us naturally. People wanted to be involved in this. People wanted those deals. I had, really good deals with one robotics company, and now the two other robotics companies wanted in on that job as well. So it was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy after a while. And I'm very, very lucky because I kind of misunderstood the lesson I was being taught, but it gave me a much better result than I ever could have imagined.
But no, but this is the point, isn't it? Hindsight is 2020 vision. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're looking back and go, wow, if I'd have been even more conscious, I could have done that even faster and better. And that's what we're doing, isn't it? That's what we're doing in training. That's what we're doing in supplying teams and equipping people to do that. Is saying, look, we found out the hard way, yeah, or
Yeah.
we study. It's our job to understand this stuff. Yeah. If you stop screaming value, you calm down, you ask better questions, it will work because, yeah, if you deliberately go out and build your ecosystem, look at your adjacent um, suppliers and say, hey, look, we can work together on this. I mean, literally from a practical point of view, they're going and speaking to people you need to speak to.
Yeah.
Going
And,
together,
and it-
if you kind of just align with your marketing. I mean, I know that's less from the sales training point of view, but these things, we're not saying it for a laugh because it sounds clever. It's because it's worked. And we've had to work out the hard way, haven't we?
Yeah, and I think later in my life, I learned that lesson then internally in accounts. The same thing worked internally. Like I've said this before many, many times, but in every one of your current clients, there's someone suffering from a problem that you solve, but they don't know you're the guy that solves it. And you already sell to these people. And you can do that same thing internally where I learned that was kind of my next stage where I learned, okay, I have a champion here now. I have a guy who's bought into me, who I've helped out a lot of times. How can we start mapping out different paths for me to meet different people? And educate different people on products or whatever it is. And like in some of my best clients, I used to go in once every 3 months just to talk. We'd pull 4 or 5 people together and I'd be like, here's what we're doing, here's what's great about it, here's what's terrible about it, here's where you work, here's where it works, here's where it doesn't. And like I got so much more business that way. Like I don't think people understand the basic concept of like a referral is a much easier sell. I don't think they understand how many types of referral there is and how much more work you can do in individual conversations if that person is doing the introductions for you or setting up the meetings for you or whatever it is. I think that's where you make the real money. Like
Yeah.
that's where you're selling, you're almost a sales factory. You're selling while you're asleep now. Someone's out there doing it for you.
Back to where you'd started, and I picked up actually the sidebar we went off is we're still on,
Yeah.
but about the trust thing because you're straight into trust. So um, yeah, very cool. Um, Something else again to point out what we're talking about. We've never talked about selling a product, have we?
No, not
We've
really.
not mentioned that in nearly half an hour. Solving a problem, solving a problem, solving a problem. Is that a fundamental mindset piece for a salesperson? That and it's a bit of a rhetorical question. I mean, I know what I think on this, but to what degree do you think that is
I
the fundamental piece?
I think it's the only question you should be asking, like regardless what you're selling. Because one thing when I'm teaching younger salespeople, I'm always saying to them is like, you're a year out the gate and you have this product. I've sold hundreds of types of things, and one thing works for all, and learning how great this product is and what their marketing is not going to work for everybody. And you don't want to waste these relationships because what you find is you tend to go into adjacent industries or adjacent products, and the relationships you build now could be very useful to you later. I've sold a lot of things to the same person over my career, right? Or the same company. And also, it will help you far more, as we know, in actually having that conversation. Because products are products are products. They're a dime a dozen. No matter what product there's competitors who, as we know, are probably very similar. And certain competitors are actually better suited to certain problems, and you should know that. I think the best thing you can ever say, and sales managers out there will kill their salespeople if they start using this, but if you find the use case where your competitor is actually better, the most trust you can ever build is by being like, they are better at that. Specifically for that, that is what they're best at, yeah. That's where they shine. And that is like the biggest trust building sentence there is in the world. I know we keep coming back to the same two things, the solution and trust, but that's how things are sold. That's why actually more importantly, that's how things are bought. It's great to know how to sell, but you really need to understand how things are purchased.
Yeah. I mean, from a pure tactical point of view, if you're talking about product, you're talking about something that probably somebody doesn't care about.
Hmm.
It's your thing.
Yeah.
If you're talking about problem, you are talking about something they care about because it's something they're living and experiencing and feeling and want to do something about. So, yeah. But what you said there, actually, no, transparency sale. Todd Capone wrote a whole book on this, didn't he? That like kind of yeah, if you're looking for this, we're probably not the best.
Hmm.
Don't speak to these guys. But if you're looking for this, this, and this, then actually that is why we are the better option. We should continue talking. Lead with the floor. He talked about going early doors on this, using it as a
Yeah.
tactic. People go, wow, wasn't expecting that. Bit like my mate in Spain, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, how disarming. Oh, I like it here. Oh, I like this conversation. I like this person. Yeah. We've been talking about half hour and we've talked about solution and trust. I think we could talk for the next 3 hours and we would probably keep coming back to those things and they're being so intertwined. And if we can focus on those and do stuff to make sure that is where we keep our focus, we'll be pretty successful, won't we?
100%. And it's even like the last point I'll bring it to is where I'm starting to see companies excel. Some of our own clients and other companies I've been following is mass outreach is still a big thing, right? And it's always been a sales trope, like do more volume, because it's more often than not been the only separator, right? Like it's been hard. But nowadays, if you start to focus that more in the discovery call, in the selling piece, it's feeding back into the outreach piece. And the more you're doing in terms of focusing on the problem and focusing on trust, the more of that language use is going around the flywheel and it's going back into sales outreach and it's going into marketing and it goes into product. And great companies are spinning this wheel quick. And I see great companies now, their marketing is changing every 2 weeks. I'm like, I who am following it, I'm seeing like, well, what it keeps getting better and better. But remember, a lot of the times for your customer, your potential customer, your lead, it's the first time they've seen it. So every improvement could be a vast improvement for them. And I see it with salespeople. We do a lot of sales outreach on behalf of companies, and all of a sudden they have a much clearer picture of who their ideal customer is. And that helps them pick the right people. And they have a lot of stories about where it's worked. So now the personalization gets a lot better. If you take a very simple example, or we saw competitor X had this problem. Do you face that problem or is it different? Like that's a very basic example. That's stage one. But even that really increases reply rates. And you go a step further and say, and what you need to not do is where a lot of companies are going now. We helped company X save 10% of X, Y, and Z. It's like, okay. We're gone back to your screaming product again without realizing it. You know what I mean? But there's a fine line where all of those stories, all of that trust building, all of that information you're gaining from having those solution and pain-based conversations makes you understand where you fit well, who you can really help, and what they're probably suffering with. So all of a sudden, every percentage is increasing, and you're in a marginal gains game then, right? Where like if you can increase reply rates only 5%, it's ginormous over the year. You know, depending on how many salespeople you have. If you increase close rates 5%, and then your marketing gets 10% better, and then that, you know, you're kind of constantly trying to spin this wheel. And we're a big, we're shouting product now, but we're a big believer in that, like,
All right.
revenue growth is one thing. It's not sales, marketing, customer service. It's a revenue focus. If you want to grow your revenue, it's a company-wide effort, right? Like everything has to kind of sing off one hymn sheet, and you need to like start learning from that customer and be driven by them if you want revenue. Anything you're driving internally is your own opinion. You know, it's a completely different thing.
Yeah, yeah. It feels like we're a bit of a fork in the road, doesn't it? Well, look, people have been going volume, volume, volume for a little bit, and now, of course, you know, volume using all the tools available, you can absolutely smash it out. But what you're saying is, no, double down back to value or your hypothesis of value or the potential value, because that's the problem that these people have probably got. Talk about that early doors, then get into conversation, then double down and actually, yes, that is what they value, and we can move forward. That's a smart
Yeah.
play.
Yeah, and I think like I have an example from something we did for outreach for a client, brief project, but we again accidentally learning lessons, my favorite type. They wanted to interview experts about their potential product. Guess what? Our reply rate was 5 times larger than it ever would have been if we were trying to sell them the product, because there was a fundamental shift. Guess what? All these, not all these, a huge percentage of these people started asking if they could buy the product. We weren't even selling the thing, and we were selling it considerably better than if we actively tried to sell it. People actually like to be heard. You know,
Yeah.
people do like to share, and sometimes as salespeople, I think there's a fundamental shift in us getting out of the way. You know, while we're shouting, nobody wants to listen. And while we're actually out there seeking knowledge, everyone wants to help. It's like, how do we blend these two ideas into something that actually benefits us rather than, you know, wasting our own time and exhausting ourselves?
Awesome. That clip could be the bit that we use at the very start. Because that's also a lovely way to wrap up this. We could chat forever, I think, on
Yeah.
this, um, but of course I've got to listen to it. So look, thank you so much for coming on and sharing those thoughts. You know, you're a very accidental person by the sounds of it.
Accidentally
But thank
successful, yeah.
goodness you learn from these accidents, eh? It's brilliant. Where can people accidentally get in touch with you?
Yeah, they accidentally.
Or on purpose?
Sales-pipeline.io. It's our company website. You can book a call with me there. You can see the references, our blogs, all that kind of stuff. Do some learning, and we're always happy to speak. Gearoid Cox on LinkedIn. You can search me up directly. I'm always happy and available to talk. And really, yeah, whether you want to embark as a client, whether you just want to shoot the breeze, we're always happy to learn and learn more about potential customers and potential sales issues, and do whatever we can to help. So yeah, reach out to us, Sales Pipeline on LinkedIn, Gearoid Cox on LinkedIn, or sales-pipeline.io.
Awesome. We'll pop those into the show notes anyway. So cool. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing. Really do appreciate it.
Pleasure, Fred. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please get in touch and hit subscribe. And remember, you can take the collaborative selling scorecard for free to check out how your sales approach works in today's environment. You'll find it in the show notes.